Who's in charge of the screen? Yeah. What's your name? Brandon. Brandon. Okay. Can we, I want to be sure everybody's here, because I'm going to start. All three of the panel members, all three of the other panel members. Oh. Yeah, because it's 2 o'clock. I look very nice behind that screen. This morning with the presenter. Okay, everybody's here. Okay, I'm going to start. Good afternoon. During the declared emergency in the City of Toronto, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and a provincial order that limits attendance at public gatherings. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variations from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that applies to property, permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure you include your name, address, and email address because Committee of Adjustment and the TLAB will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with our decision, it may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. Today, I will call each item in the order listed on the agenda. When an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant will proceed with their presentation if required. The committee may ask questions and/or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching the 5 minutes. When addressing the committee, please state your name and address and confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will present the application to the committee first. Please note the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. If the application is substantially revised, the committee may decide to defer it to ensure the revised application is accurate and all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals in support of or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentation. When all other speakers are finished, the applicant agent has an opportunity to rebut issues raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. I assume, Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, that the minutes of the last meeting have been confirmed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no minutes for adoption this afternoon.
Fine. Are there any declarations of interest of panel or staff for this afternoon's first segment? Okay. Madam Deputy Secretary, are there any deferral requests?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, not at this time.
I thought there was a deferral request. Oh, right, not in this time slot, I don't think. Okay. Are there any files to be closed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no.
All right, thank you. We shall begin with the first item, which is 1144 Davenport Road. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing two-story mixed-use building containing 3 dwelling units by constructing a complete third and fourth story addition and adding 2 dwelling units for a total of 5 dwelling units. A ground floor commercial unit will be maintained. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from planning, correspondence in support from 1146 and 1042 Davenport Road, correspondence in concern or interest from 1157 Davenport Road, and opposition from 1142 Davenport Road. Mr. Foderick.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, we also have some supplementary materials that were submitted.
Right.
A 15 signature petition in opposition from owners and occupants of Alberta Avenue and Davenport Road. We do have correspondence in opposition from Cassandra Spence. And then we have a 7 signature petition in opposition, again signed by owners and occupants of Davenport Road. We also received a letter from Councillor Bailao. She does not have concerns with the height variance or the combined gross floor area variance. However, she does raise concern about the viability of the proposed commercial space given the significant increase in residential floor area. And there was also correspondence from Davenport Neighborhood Association also opposing the reduction in the commercial use space.
Right. Okay. Mr. Foderick?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi there. So I'm Michael Foderick. I'm a lawyer, a planning and development lawyer from McCarthy Tetro, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Percy Ellis. Percy Ellis is a small Toronto-based development company. You've heard about the proposal. There was a little mischaracterization there, certainly by the petition, and I hope to clarify that. The proposal is for a 4-story mixed-use building. It'll have 5 residential units and a ground floor commercial retail unit at the front on Davenport Road. To be very clear, the size of the commercial unit will match the existing and long-standing size of the commercial unit. More about that in a minute. It's very important to note that There was a proposal made for this property a couple of years ago by the same owner to make 6 residential units and to delete the commercial space. That caused a lot of controversy in the community, as I think it's already self-evident. We have revised the proposal to restore the commercial unit. There was also some concern about how we were making a modern facade. We also agreed to retain the existing facade. So as I'm about to explain, I think a lot of the opposition you're going to hear pertains to that previous proposal and not the current revised proposal, because the current revised proposal really only has 2 variances. One is a height variance for 47 centimeters. The other there's 2 variances that relate to the density, and I'll explain those in a moment. Those are the only variances. There are no variances whatsoever related to the commercial space. First of all, on the height variance, I won't spend a long time on it because I really do believe 47 centimeters is de minimis. 4 stories is what we're proposing. 4 stories is permitted as of right in this zone. 4 stories is permitted in the neighborhoods designation, which is what the OP designates this property. And obviously it goes without saying that 47 centimeters, although we've done the shadow studies, I didn't bother sharing them because it is a de minimis amount of shadow and whatnot, nor is anyone, to my knowledge, alleging that 47 centimeters will materially change things like the perception of the structure from the street or the shadow and whatnot. Such variances of 47 centimeters are much greater common at the committee, as you know. But most importantly, I think, is that the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and the intent and purpose of the OP in this designation in this zone is for 4-story buildings, and we maintain that. We're consistent with that. We certainly maintain the intent. I was hoping the committee could call up the College Street image that I submitted, because a picture says 1,000 words. This is a building on College Street, 864, I believe it is. It's kind of an inspiration, if you will. So yeah, it's right there. This is an indication of what we think this building will look like once it's done. Now, it's not actually an apples and apples comparison, because this building in the picture is a 5-story building and ours is a 4-story building, but I think you get the picture. A tasteful commercial space on the first floor with residential above that tapers back at the upper levels. Again, we have 1 less story than what they're showing here, but I think you'll get the idea. And I like this picture because you can see how harmoniously it works with the other commercial adjacent to it, as well as the residential houses, which are quite similar to some of the residential houses in the vicinity of this site in Davenport. So although this particular example is higher than ours, I think it gives you a sense of what we're going for and how tasteful and I think good planning what it is we're asking for is. I want to also speak about the density. The 2 changes contemplated are to the permitted residential density and to the permitted total density for the site. They result in 2.73 and 2.46 respectively. I think that's a modest amount. I submit humbly as a modest amount of density for a site located on a main street like this one. And the type of gentle residential intensification we're talking about here is entirely, I think, consistent with good planning, certainly the intent and purpose of the OP, again, this being a neighborhood's designation. And if we're going to find gentle places to put residential units, and we all know how in dire need the city is of good residential housing, this is a great place for it. Apartment building, it's noteworthy, is permitted as of right in this zone, in this 438-86 zone. So I don't think it's the intent and purpose of that, the implicit intent and purpose of that provision to suggest that you should put all tiny units that fit within the total density. No, we're doing robust family size units, the type of units, dare I say, that ideally you would hope people are building more of in this city. And so that causes an increase to the total density. So it's something that we think overall obviously meets the 4 tests. We think it represents good planning. I want to also note in the few moments I have left that we have a letter of support from the most important neighbor. I submit the most immediate neighbor, 1146 Davenport. The counselor, although she did write a letter, it seems to be at the behest of the residents group, she does explicitly say that she doesn't object to the 3 variances you have in front of you. So I thought that was actually helpful. She raises some concerns, but again, they're about the commercial space. No variance pertains to that in any way. And finally, community planning, who was opposed to the previous proposal, has now indicated that they have no objection to this proposal. I could say a lot more, but in the time allotted, that's all I can say. So I'm subject to your questions. Those are my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Halina Gadolnik.
Through you, Mr. Chair. My name is Helena Gudodolnik. Can you hear me? Okay. I own an MCR zone building at 1157 Davenport, across from the street from the applicant. It's where I've lived and run my business for over 10 years.
All right,
I
could
welcome
we-
more
for the-
residential apartments
For the
in our
record,
neighborhood.
for the record, could we have your name, please?
I said, my name is Helena Gerdolnik.
Thank you.
Said that at the beginning? Yeah,
Go ahead.
okay. So I've lived and run my business for over 10 years in the neighborhood. I own a property across the street. I welcome more residential apartments, not concerned with the height or extra cars the residences may bring. To keep the neighborhood walkable, I do not support as much residential density increase as requested because it is at the expense of reducing the commercial area. The existing two-story building had 2 units before Percy Ellis Holdings began construction in 2018. One existing second-floor dwelling unit over the full second floor, and one existing commercial unit over the full ground floor and basement, and not how they characterize it. It was rented out to Larry at LNJ Cycles. Many of us here today, the local people, can confirm the size of the store. Larry's lease was canceled by Percy Ellis in 2016 when they bought the property and left empty 2 years before construction started. So when they talk about the existing, it's what they've done so far in terms of already making that reduced commercial that they've left empty now for 4 years, 5 years. I worry about the precedent this application may set for the remaining commercial spaces in our village of commercial storefronts, as a number of these storefronts have been purposely kept empty in the interest of development. So to support the application in full, I ask the applicant either to keep the full ground floor commercial or to keep the front half ground floor as they have and the basement commercial, and to design the commercial unit to be viable for business and not more easily accommodate a residential 1-bedroom apartment use as it looks like right now. We would love the College Street example shown, the storefront there. The increase in residential density does not meet the minor variance tests. It's neither desirable development nor follows the intent of the MCR zoning, as it does not leave enough area for a viable commercial unit. Also, the MCR zoning does not allow more than one dwelling below grade or partly below grade. According to the bylaw definition of grade, there's only one dwelling officially below grade, but if you go to rent unit 2, the ground floor apartment, and found the door is 11 steps below the ground level to the back, you would call it a basement, or at least partly underground. Unit 5 is completely subterranean with window wells, not windows. It is fully below grade in the front and 17 feet below grade in the back. The bylaw likely did not anticipate an MCR property located on an escarpment, but its intent to avoid 2 underground or partly underground dwellings seems clear, and that basement would be much better use to support the business above. So for the 3 minor variances, to include all proposed dwellings except for basement unit 5, I would support the extra height variance requested. I support the combined density increase. But number 3, we do not support the increased residential density to 2.46, but instead only to 1.97, which is still a major increase, to make sure that the applicant does not decide to omit the 4th floor in exchange for this extra increase. So 1.97 would be removing that basement subterranean residential unit, keeping it commercial instead. And to make sure that they don't, if this passed, omit the 4th floor instead of the basement, we'd ask that a condition be added to the minor variance to ensure the basement's not used for dwelling in order to make the commercial unit more viable. And so in conclusion, I just want to add a few things because I believe the applicant is acting in bad faith and intends to rent the commercial unit for residential use because of the design of the unit. It looks like a 1-bedroom apartment, a closet off a storage unit that is the size of a bedroom. The original variance application did try to remove the commercial unit. It was pulled last minute a few years ago. And an email with Percy Ellis Holdings agents in 2020 said that if they didn't find a commercial tenant within 3 months, they would go back to committee to try to remove the commercial. So I think it's their intention to do that. The comparable study in the file does not accurately depict the area. It cherry picks 4 convenient properties across the street out of the 19 properties in the MCR area, most of which, like mine, have a storefront commercial and are under 1.5 density. In conclusion, I support the height relaxation, a combined density that they're asking for, but a residential density only of maximum 1.97 with a condition that the basement not be used as a dwelling, but instead be part of the commercial unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Castell?
Hi, Evan. You've been unmuted on our end. You might have to unmute yourself.
We don't hear anything on our,
Is he there?
yeah. I might try giving you a call. Actually, you didn't leave a phone number, so we can't call.
Should we move on while you try to get him on? There's one more speaker. Okay. Mr. Gabon?
Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Gambon. I'm representing Franca Gambon, who is the owner of 1142 Davenport Road. We're in opposition of the development itself for a number of reasons. Firstly, being the current construction, which is occurring right now, has caused damage to our property, and Percy Ellis was only able to fix it once we threatened a civil action against them. So we feel that because of the extra height that they're going up with, that our foundation, because we have an adjoining wall and it's a stone foundation, we will have some major issues, as we have already had a retaining wall break, and we've also had our parging and our cracks in our bricks on our foundation.
All right, Mr. Gambon, we,
Yes.
as a committee, don't deal with building issues or construction issues. So that is something you'll have to take up with the building.
Oh, yes, I just want to let that be known. But what I did want to say is the entire north block is all two-story residences, mixed-use residences. And going up to 4 stories will change the entire look of it. The lawyer's picture of college does not really depict what the north side of Davenport actually holds. I actually sent something on my letter which actually shows what's currently there. You have Rogers antennas. There are, as you can see, there are Rogers antennas up there. Who knows what they'll cause? There are other antennas. There are billboards. I don't think that it would look proper. It would change the neighborhood. It would give it a different feel. So this is why we are in opposition of going up 4 stories.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have Mr. Castell? Mr. Castell?
Hello, can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can.
I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Chair, for that technical mix-up. I was waiting on the line as planned half an hour before the call. I very much appreciate your making time for the input from our Residents Association. This reapplication is the culmination of a long dialogue that we've had in very good faith.
All right,
with Percy Ellis.
sir, could we, for the record, could we have your name and your address, please?
I'm sorry, yeah. So it's Evan Castell, and my personal address is 571 Delaware Avenue North. So I'm about 120 meters from the applicant property. So to continue, this application is a culmination of a long dialogue which we believed was in good faith with Percy Ellis. As a longtime resident myself, my family and our neighbors had a long relationship with the bicycle store that occupied the property before the termination of the lease by Percy Ellis. This bicycle store occupied the ground floor, much of the ground floor to the back of the building, and the entire basement for storage. I think it's a misrepresentation by Mr. Foderick, perhaps a misunderstanding of someone not familiar with the property, that the retention of commercial is a tiny piece of what used to exist. And in my correspondence, written correspondence with Kelly Shimke of Percy Ellis, she herself said they are deleting the existing commercial use in the basement because it was not going to be profitable for them. And that was as of several days ago. So I'm surprised that this, I think we're entering now into a bad faith proposal where local conditions aren't being honored and are being misrepresented by Mr. Foderick as a variance concerning solely the residential use. Our Residents Association, as noted in my letter, is not concerned with the, I think, tasteful introduction of new residential into our neighborhood. We are concerned with the eradication of fully fledged commercial use, which was large enough to permit a flexible range of businesses which would rejoin the lost amenities in our neighborhood. The offering in the current drawing of a very hobbled commercial property in the front unit, which has already been pre-configured for residential use and not shown in the drawing, As of a few days ago, from behind the windows, residents were able to see and photograph a partition wall, which further divides it into a micro apartment, which is being proposed instead of the previous vivid and fully functioning commercial space. I do also want to point out that this is a complete change in precedent in the continuous strip of neighboring commercial uses on that same strip, unlike the precedent photo submitted by Mr. Foderick, which, as the previous speaker noted, cherry-picked the opposite side of the street. Our side of the street, where 1144 applicant is cited, is entirely the set of uses that are either full-size, full-floor commercial at grade, and then a basement to allow storage, which allows the kind of flexible and large-ranging kinds of amenities that belong in our walkable neighborhood. So I need to recap that the petition that you see signed by business owners, not residents, the business owner petition is a petition of almost entirely harmonious and uniform disagreement with this proposal from the business owners who immediately neighbor this property, who counted on protection from the MCR and the OP to be able to maintain a sense of continuous neighboring commercial uses that would maintain the vitality of a walkable strip, a suitable draw of commercial properties. I do note that the only support letter is from a business who has been following entirely the Percy Ellis new proposal by closing down from street interaction, becoming essentially a non-commercial use in a commercial strip. The door is perpetually closed and has never actually returned to participating in the what the OP calls the neighborhood setting of this neighborhood. So really the only supporter is someone who is following the exact same template for the slow erosion of an accessible and socially vibrant neighborhood. I want to close by saying that our neighborhood association has long told Percy Ellis we would be happy to accept the residential variances if they were able to simply meet the existing, maintain rather, the existing commercial use. And we are baffled by the, at first, dismissive and now I think deceptive proposal and drawings that suggest that commercial will be retained. This massively hobbled commercial will simply be the first chip in the demise of a strip of highly flexible and broadly appealing commercial units. And we're very glad that Councillor Bylaw shares our concerns and has been able to submit a letter in support of this. So I thank you for your time, and I really hope that we can consider the facts on the ground and not a perhaps skewed bundle of submissions that currently stand. Thanks again.
Thank you. Mr. Foderick?
Thank you for the chance to respond. I sort of want to use an analogy as how I feel about this over the last few years. The analogy is a runaway train. You know, when originally the proposal was to eliminate the commercial, you know, the community, as you've heard, has got quite upset about that, and that picked up a lot of steam, that train going downhill. When we revised and we deferred several times, revised our plan several times, as the committee's records indicate, you know, we've now completely complied with the bylaw in respect to the commercial units. But that runaway train doesn't stop on a dime. That keeps going, and people circulate petitions, and they get, you know, worked up, if you will, and it's frustrating for us, but understandable that you know, a year's worth of that momentum doesn't stop on a dime. But the reality is that none of the objections we have heard today actually pertain to the variances in front of the committee. You know, and I'll just say by way of an aside, because I think the committee would agree it's not relevant. I hear there's some bad blood about the termination of the bicycle store. I hear that. I know that store. My own bike was repaired there more than once. That was a misstep, perhaps. Likewise, some of the construction-related comments. These are not relevant to the variances, and I'm not even going to sit here and pretend, because I don't know, that Percy Ellis is perhaps blameless and hasn't been a good neighbor. I honestly don't know, but I do know that it's not relevant to the variances, any of those things, as material as they are. Speaking briefly directly to the points raised in the petition, you heard a slice of it today. 4 stories is permitted as of right. There are some folks who might not agree with that, but the neighborhood's designation is very clear. There's no variance related to that. I mean, I think we heard some folks explicitly say they have no concern about the 47 centimeters, but even if someone did say that, it really wouldn't be believable, if I could be believable. Again, I don't think anyone's really concerned about 47 centimeters. People who might be concerned about height just perhaps don't realize that 4 stories is permitted as of right here, unfortunately. But I would submit, frankly, that's a modest form of development, and if and not to put too fine a point on, but when I initially met with community planning about this, the question was, are you going to assemble the block and do something higher? And frankly, this type of proposal will preclude something like that from happening. So I actually really think this is a good proposal from the perspective of height. In terms of the lack of progress, 5 years, that's explicitly the focus of the petition. I don't think it's fair to blame Percy Ellis for the fact that it deferred several times to revise its plans. We also got caught by the fact that the ward switched from Etobicoke York to Toronto East York, which caused the file to have to switch and delay things over a year right there, etc. So it has been a long delay, and that's drawn out the construction and whatnot. But I don't think it's fair to sort of blame us for that and suggest that represents bad faith or something like that on behalf of the owner. The bottom line is we revised the proposal directly to respond to the concerns about the heritage facade and to reincorporate and reintroduce the commercial space. Those were good moves. So I really don't think it's fair. And that it took time to revise those things. So I don't think that's something to be fault for. Finally, on the commercial spaces, is most important. Again, the variances do not relate to the commercial space. This is not that we're dramatically reducing in size. Incorrect. The ground floor space that was present for the previous use, the bicycle store everyone seems so fond of, will be the same size, 538 square feet. You see it right there in the plans. It's dimensioned. There's no BS about that. If someone's suggesting that's dishonest, that is very unfair, and I have no doubt that the bylaw officers would enforce if someone tried to do something differently. The request and the plans represent 538 square feet for a commercial space, which, by the way, is as of right. There's no variance related to that, and it's a perfectly viable size, by the way, of commercial space. You know, Main Streets, Dundas, College, all these streets, many others we can name, even this street, have thriving businesses that function within that size space. We can have a coffee shop, a florist, a cobbler, all sorts of things. Maybe not a bike shop, because they might require massive amounts of back of house spaces or bikes or whatnot. Maybe not, I don't know. But certainly that's plenty large enough and certainly comparable to any successful main streets we see in Toronto. My friends, they're trying to tie this to the variances somehow, and again, so I want to focus on this final point. But they're suggesting somehow that the residential density is coming at expense of the commercial. Absolutely not correct. And I say by way of an aside, in terms of demising walls, what you see depicted there, if a tenant wants a different configuration, a commercial configuration, we will fit it out to meet their needs. I think that's worth mentioning. But on the current zoning label says, quote, T 1.5, C 1.0, R 1.5. That means total density 1.5, commercial 1.0, residential 1.5. We are not touching the C 1.0, nor, frankly, do I think the committee has the power to reduce that. We're not. After this today is over, one thing I can be sure of is the C 1.0 will still be permitted. Now, I also know the existing zoning label says T 1.5, R 1.5. That's a 1-to-1 ratio, right? That's a 1-to-1 ratio. We would be totally appropriate to preserve said ratio. But if, although we don't formally amend the zoning label, if this were approved, it would be T 2.73, C 1.0, R 2.46. In other words, we're improving the ratio, if anything, right? So it's no longer one, we're improving the ratio. So this suggestion that somehow it's coming at the expense of, it's already T 1.5, R 1.5. I don't accept that for a moment. And there's this idea that a large basement commercial space is necessary to make commercial viable. It's not true. It's just simply not true. And it's the ground floor space that's most important, and that's what we're going to do. I wanted to add one more small
Mr. Foderick, your time is up. Could you just wrap up, please?
Okay, I was a very small point worth mentioning, and it was the image that was shown a moment ago of the corner of Davenport and Alberta Avenue looking northeast, and it illustrates sort of how tough this commercial strip is. We're going to make a go of it nonetheless, because that's what the community's asked us to do. We're going to try to make a go of that commercial unit nonetheless, but it also illustrates the dramatic grade change at the back. And it's worth mentioning that because, the houses that are in Winona and Alberta, the first houses, if you're standing on the front porch of those houses, you're like at the second or third story of, equivalent to if you were standing on Davenport. So I just highlight that because if anyone's concerned about height, be it in stories, be it in centimeters, the grade change really assists in minimizing any sort of potential impacts you might normally have, as if if it was all at grade. That really works in favor, if you will, of that additional 47 centimeters being acceptable. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes, Yim? You're muted, Yim.
Yes, Yeah, I just try to unmute myself. Okay, Mr. Porter, I have one question. For your basement dwelling at the front along Davenport, do you bring light in by almost like how do you partition the front, the storefront, so that it also create a light shaft and send light in the basement?
That's exactly what it is. There's light shafts there, and again, to make it clear, the residential below is completely as of right. There is no suggestion there's
No,
a variance.
I'm not asking the question.
No, you're right. There is a light shaft. It will be building code compliant in regards to light and window space and all of that. But I want to be very clear.
No, I'm not asking any more question. I'm asking that you just say yes. Okay, and then do you think, the question is, do you think it's a good planning idea to sort of sacrifice the storefront, which you're facing? I do not know, you're going to paint it, like, I guess, drywall or white. The storefront will totally be just housing these two light shafts, right?
Yeah, so
Size of, yeah.
and it might assist if we pulled up the architectural drawings and looked at the front elevation, but these light shafts that you referred to, and these waves of light, they are not coming at the expense of the commercial windows. I don't think that's what you're implying, but I want to make that very clear.
That's my question is, I'm not implying anything.
So the bottom windows, so you have a commercial front door, commercial windows, right? And then the upper windows are commercial in nature, and you could have displays or whatever a commercial store may.
Also,
and then
you're dividing the window. What the bottom half is the light shaft, and then there's only the upper half. Then you got some kind of shelving, and then you get the window.
Yeah, that would be a commercial display of some kind, and it could be various things. They might or might not have a commercial display, but it would be a typical commercial window. And you could easily, you see many commercial buildings have like it covered. There's no light at the bottom at all. It's just covered. So I think this is kind of an ingenious way to get light to the basement and improve those units in a way that in no way impacts the viability or attractiveness or usability of the commercial storefront. It's completely a bona fide commercial storefront, which we're trying to make a go of there to make it viable.
Okay, I just try to understand your drawing, that's all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. Mr. Foderick, if we go back to the zoning for the property use, saying it's T1.5, C1.0, R1.5, the C1.0 represents obviously the commercial use on the property, and is it capped at 1.0? Is that what that means? That's the maximum permitted commercial? So
exactly. So the total FSI you could have as of right is T total, right? 1.5 times, of which 1 times FSI commercial or some combination of 1.5 times residential. That's with the T 1.5, C 1.0, and R 1.5. We are not touching the C. It is 1 times coverage. It continues to be 1 times coverage. Nothing we're doing varies that or reduces that, or could, frankly. I don't think the committee has that power to reduce permissions. I think it grants variances.
Okay, so I just wanted to understand that, and I do. I guess I wanted to clarify that I understood it. And so, is there a minimum commercial, like on this property, are you permitted, and I'm assuming the answer is no because it's mixed use, but are you permitted to have no commercial space?
That's a great question. I think there was a variance previously. You do have to have at least some sort of commercial space, because in our original proposal where we had 6 residential units, there was a variance for that. I won't bore you with it because it's not a variance today that's in front of the committee, but there was a variance for that under the old 438-86 bylaw. There would be no such variance under 569-2013, but this small stretch of buildings is in a hole. So I'll just say yes is the answer to your question, but it's quite relevant that this is not a facade or some kind of, there's no minimum size, but 538 square feet is a bona fide, legitimate size space, that is bigger than a lot of successful businesses I know on main streets like this one. So it would be a different story if someone was accusing us, because I think they kind of are, of facadism somehow, where it's like it's only a window box and nothing more. No, this is a bona fide, this will be a viable for, maybe not for the old bike shop, maybe not, I don't know, but for a coffee shop, a florist, so many other things I could name, it will work fine, and we're gonna find a tenant like that, hopefully a good one.
Okay, so in terms of the 1.0, I don't have the benefit of seeing what your previous application was. I don't have that information. I'm assuming the applicant was trying to, not you specifically, but the applicant was trying to eliminate the commercial use altogether, and that's probably what the variance was for. Is that correct?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Well,
Hardly?
there's a qualification within the. Again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on because it's literally not a variance in front of it. It was deleted as a variance in this latest version. But there was in the old 43886 a quirky qualification which we needed an exemption from, and I really do not intend to take you through it today. But if you were to look at the committee's online the repository of information, our original cover letter identified that variance and went into great detail about it, how it works, and why we needed it, and more, making arguments about it. But again, to be very clear, we acquiesced to the complaints we were hearing from community planning, from the residents, from the councilor's office, and we restored the commercial unit. So that is no longer a variance. Again, this train just couldn't screech to a stop, and people decided already they were going to oppose us. And there was perhaps a mishandling of this, to be quite blunt, by Percy Ellis with some of the community engagement, which I wish they had done differently. But I'm just being very honest about that, because really there shouldn't be any opposition, given that we're doing exactly what we were asked to do, and there are no variances further related to the commercial. It's that simple.
Yes, Yim.
I just want to follow up what Mr. Fodder just said. Are you sure that the process is the same when you change a mixed use to just residential use of a building? Is just going through a simple variance, or do you have to apply for rezoning?
Well, we're not.
I just want to be sure what you just said.
Right, so it is possible to do variances for uses. I think they do come before the committee fairly regularly, but I want to be clear, we are not asking for any variances related to use. This is currently a mixed-use building with a commercial ground floor and residential above, and we are maintaining the commercial ground floor and adding more residential above, as well as residential in the basement, in fairness. But, it was a mixed-use building, it is a mixed-use building, it will be a mixed-use building, and so there's no variance, no rezoning, nothing required, no variance, certainly.
Oh, but that's not what I'm asking, right? I'm just asking that you sound like you're quite sure that only have to go through a minor variance to change the use, and you are only speculating. You're not sure of that, right?
No, I'm 100% sure that we're not changing the use at all.
No, I know that. I know that. What I'm trying to say is, the previous application is just saying if in the scenario of commercial, you're deleting the commercial use. Is that just only a minor variance you have to go through, or whether it has to go through a longer process?
I think I understand your question now. I perhaps didn't before. And I want to stress very clearly what that previous application, which it seems has got the committee, I don't want the committee to misunderstand and think for a moment that previous variance is before the committee anymore. It is not. It is not on your list of variances. We are not asking for it. It was to delete the commercial use or to create the variance would allow the deletion of the commercial use. It is not being asked for anymore. Could that have been done by minor variance? I think yes. I mean, there was a PPR, it was requested. The point is we're not asking for it anymore, and despite what someone erroneously stated, there is no ulterior motive to come back to this committee and ask for something different again. I have been to this committee many times. I can say confidently that would be a bad look for us if we were to come back to you in a few months or something, 3 months I think it was implied, and ask for this to be, that will not be looked on well by you guys, and I presume the community will go crazy and we will have World War III, and you probably won't grant it. So that wouldn't be my advice, but nor is that. And so it is unhelpful, and it sort of illustrates the difficulty we've had, I think, or Percy Ellis has had. There's been a breakdown in communication here, and that's unfortunate, and I'm not even going to pretend that our side has been blameless in it, but it has resulted in what culminates today in a misunderstanding, frankly, that we're somehow destroying when we are maintaining the existing size commercial unit, and it's a viable size. What else can I say?
Yes, Lisa.
I'm just, I guess you pointed out there's not a variance for the commercial portion of it. I'm gathering from what you're saying, there's not a minimum in the bylaw required in terms of the commercial portion. Is that correct?
Correct, but
Can't eliminate it.
would be over it, I would imagine, because 530 is a lot bigger than a lot of commercial. So there is no minimum, but this isn't a facade situation.
Okay, sorry, just
Yeah.
let me finish. So we have a variance here for the combined gross floor area is 2.73. And then we're looking, variance number 3 is that the residential gross floor area is 2.46.
Right.
I might be simplifying this, but if I look at it and I calculate it, I'm assuming then that leaves 2.73 minus 2.46 gives me 0.27 left of the gross floor areas left is commercial. Is that correct?
Roughly, yes.
Okay, because I'm just trying to figure out.
That's what's proposed.
To me, that's mostly residential at this point. So
It is.
It doesn't seem to be a mixed-use building in my view when it's when I look at the ratio of residential to commercial. So can you speak to that and help me understand how this
Absolutely.
still complies? Thank you.
Absolutely. Any building, I mean, literally speaking, any building which contains even a little bit of non-residential is technically considered mixed use by both the OP and zoning bylaw, right? It's a technical answer. But on a more practical, realistic level, this is not an area that is defined by, office buildings or other things like where we have commercial podiums and something else above. This is the commercial that exists on this particular stretch is first floor, storefront type stuff, small, mom and pop shop types of businesses. And that's what we're preserving, and that's what we have. So it is a mixed use. That is the type of non-res that is characteristic of this street, and we're maintaining that. And it's a bona fide amount, as I said. And just to your point about the total being 2.73, is that, it is, and I think one of the speakers, said that, somehow it should tinker with one of the variances. We will have the right already, right, to go up to 1 times commercial. So if it were viable, you could. I mean, we already have the 1, and nothing we're doing today will preclude us from using the 1 point times. What my friends would like, I think, is for us to go and to incorporate the basement in the commercial space. The bylaw, there's no variances to do that. No one can force them to do that. We're going to rent a viable commercial space, but a big empty basement is not efficient. It's not something that we'd rather put a residential unit there. And yeah, it might not be a bike shop again, but it'll be some other good thing. And we want to rent it because we don't want it vacant. That's for sure. We'll want to get some kind of rent off of it. So it'll be hopefully a good tenant, certainly one who pays rent. And so that's a great thing. So the mixed use character of this street, it's very consistent with the mixed use character of this street. And again, that's the literal answer. And the technical one is that there is no, even one little retail unit on a massive tower will get it characterized as mixed use technically. That's the technical legal answer. But the practical one is the mixed use we're proposing is very consistent with the mixed use present on this stretch.
So just to follow up then, would you say then that the 1.5 cap in the zoning bylaw for the residential GFA is to sort of, okay, so let me back up. Could you make the commercial unit even smaller if you wanted to? Is there anything stopping you guys from doing that? Like not eliminating it, but making it smaller?
I'll be very honest. I'll be very honest with you. I haven't thought about that because that isn't our intention. And I would think that would be a very bad look for us with the city, with the councillor, even if it didn't cause us to come back to committee, which it might. That would be a terrible approach for us to take. I wouldn't condone that in any way. No. So I honestly haven't thought about that because we have not even contemplated that. But I think that if you were to approve the variances today, as I've already said, it would theoretically allow you to put more commercial in because we would have, as you pointed out, we have about 0.27 roughly. We would have already the as of right to go up to 1 times. So yeah, you could triple, quadruple, whatever it is, almost quadruple the amount of commercial space as of right. You need building permits, but you might need a site plan. I'd have to think about it, but you certainly wouldn't need a variance for it. That would be fine, but increasing the amount of residential, no, I couldn't because the amount of residential, I'm thinking about this now out loud, I cannot increase the amount of residential because what you see, and the the architectural plans are in front of you. We've shrink wrapped that. We haven't given ourselves any wiggle room. We haven't built in a buffer or something. The numbers are all there on the page. So if we want to increase the amount of residential, we would have to, we would have to either come back to the committee, and I can't just lop it off the top of the building or something like that because of that. If you were to look at my original cover letter, you would see I would then be offending that other provision, that one that requires some commercial space to exist. I would be, if I had deleted the commercial, I would be offending that. Then I would need another variance, or I'd be illegal. So any suggestion or any concern that we can somehow do something nefarious, A, we don't think that way. B, it just doesn't seem possible at first blush to me. Everyone would go crazy if we did that, and we won't do that because that would burn our reputation down with this committee. But I don't think it's legally possible because the residential is not the same as the T. The T is different than the R, right? And that ensures what I'm saying is true, right? Even though the T and the R used to be the same, right? They were 1-to-1 ratio. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Sorry if it wasn't.
Yes, Larry, do you have a question? All right, I think we should go into committee now. I just want to say, to me, this seems like a realistic proposal because, and I'm familiar with that area, having lived in that area for 12 years or so. That is not a very viable commercial strip. They're all small stores there. There's a few of them that are closed. It seems to me that the opposition is trying to punish the owner of this store because they got the owner of this building because they got the opportunity to do so at the committee. Not that they would, but I think they would punish anyone who closed the commercial strip because it makes it close a store on this strip because it makes it all less viable. But we've got to take into account that retail business has changed. If you go down any main street, you see what used to be a store is now a dentist's office or a real estate office or a legal office. It's not a store that people come to and buy small things or big things or anything else. So, and also the city is looking for more residential space, and that's what this is doing. With respect to the proportions, we have dwelling units in which the bylaw says you can't have secondary units that are more than 45% of the space, and we are allowing them allowing residential secondary units to be more than 45% because we realize that it's if you're going to put in more than one unit or so, it's often going to be more than the 45%, and we need residential space. So this, to me, seems like a very viable and reasonable proposal. I don't think that it would have profited this owner to increase the commercial space, and that's what all the opponents are suggesting. So he's got a viable space here, and he's not asking for any variances to reduce it or anything. So I would be supporting this. Yes, Yim.
Oh, I just thought they're actually a little bit more complicated. I agree with what you just said. We need residential, but it's not that they're not allowed to have residential. They actually have a lot of residential space in this proposal. What bothered me a bit is that the main street, this is still a main street, Davenport, and although maybe it's not viable as we hope, but the setup of the architectural setup is such that what bothered me most is the front basement apartment. The quality of it, it seems okay. They have a little bit of light, which is like facing the street, but in terms of the quality of the light and the privacy, it seems to me that it is if you have to plan a residential unit, you more like plan better, but this is a forced situation. So that bothered me a little bit there. And I agree that they can have more, even more residential. If the back, they can actually create more residential. I have no problem. But I think a Main Street storefront with the basement always as a part of the storage, and this is how it works in most of our storefront in Toronto's streets, Queen Street, King. And I do not think that you should squeeze in an apartment in the front below grade. That's my problem. I think if we were going to approve it, I would like to at least impose a condition that the commercial unit can never be used as residential, because the layout of it, as you're looking at it now, there's very little difference from the commercial space from the rest of the residential units, that the layout. So I just say that we can just emphasize that it's not allowed to be residential.
Any further comments? We have a motion. Yes, Lisa?
I won't be supporting this application. When I look at this, to me, this is becoming mostly a residential building at this point. And, you know, when the commercial portions of the building get eroded away this way, it does affect all the other businesses on the street, in my view. It is zoned as mixed use, and I question whether this is really going to be, viable as a mixed use building when the commercial portion is 0.27 out of the 2.73 GFA on the property. So I'm not in support of the application because I don't think it meets the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw for that very reason.
Any further comments, or do we have a motion? Larry, do you have something to add? We've been very quiet, uncharacteristically.
I have, Chair. I want to thank everyone for the conversation, and I'm hesitant to prolong it much more. But I sort of lean a little bit towards what you were saying. I was pretty much supportive of this from the get-go. I'm reasonably assured that the commercial activity will continue. I like Yim's idea about attaching a condition to it. I frankly am just simply not expert enough to determine whether a 500 square foot footplate is sufficient to be a viable business. I don't know. I imagine it is. There will be something that will be there. And if we put a condition on to restrict that from being used as habitable space, I think that might actually give the neighbors in the surrounding community a little bit of comfort that that storefront won't be used for residential. And I'm not concerned about the height. If you go up and down Davenport, there are 4-story buildings all along there. So this is not anything new, in my view, into the neighborhood. So I'm with you, Chair. I'd be supporting this one.
All right, do we have a motion?
If you want my support, I will impose that condition.
Yes, sir. So I'll move a motion to.
Only because giving them from themselves the proposal, the layout, I just want to make sure that it's commercial use in the future.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to move a motion on this one to approve it and see what Lisa does. But I'd like to move a motion to approve, subject to the condition that the commercial portion of the building, as represented on, I think, on drawing A201, be restricted from use as habitable.
All right, we have a seconder. Yim, all in favor of the motion? All opposed? All right, the motion passes 3-1. Thank you. Number 2, 914 Eastern Avenue. Purpose of this application is to construct a new 3-story apartment building with rooftop terraces. This building will contain 3 at-grade live-work home occupation units, 6 2-story townhouse units on the 2nd and 3rd levels, and rear integral garages with double car lift for a total of 11 on-site parking spaces. Access to the integral garage will be from the existing laneway. With this application, we have materials submitted by the applicant. We have email correspondence from planning, traffic planning, transportation services, I meant, and also from Toronto Region Conservation Authority. We have opposition from 1 and 17 Minto Street. Mr. Gain.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm Trevor Gain. I'm the applicant here on behalf of the owners.
All right, thank you, sir. Can we have your address?
I reside at number 10 Celebrity Place in Markham.
All right, thank you. Can we hear your presentation, please?
Yes, as you mentioned, the proposal in front of you is to demolish the existing one-story commercial building down to its foundation level and to construct a new low-rise, medium-density residential building. The mix, as you described, we're going to have 3 live-work units on the ground floor, fronting on Eastern, and then on the second and third floors will comprise of 6 two-story townhomes, 3 facing Eastern and 3 facing an interior courtyard. I will mention that over the last couple of years, this proposal has been circulating through a site plan application, and we've been working very close with city planning to modify this into the application that you have in front of you. As a result, we have no planning comments or comments from the councillor, which speaks to its desirability. The zoning in this area is an R zone, which is normally set up for detached houses, semi-detached row houses, and multi-unit buildings. As such, any type of development of this type, there's minor variances that are sought after. So I would just like to speak to a few of these variances, just based on our conversations with the neighbors. These are kind of the questions that they are coming up with. Number 1, building depth. If I can get the first page of the supporting material on the screen. The building depth, we're allowed 14 meters, and the proposal is 26. That's page 2. Can you go back 1 page? So the red outline is the existing building, which occupies almost about 99% of the lot. And what we're proposing to do is the shaded area is the proposed building, which will basically line up with the adjacent building on the right. What this does is it just creates a better open space at the back. It allows for our driveways, and it creates a little bit more open space for the lane and the usability of the lane for the residents up and down Minto in our proposal. So this reduction in building depth is actually about 6.6 meters, and we feel it's a positive situation based on the existing situation. With that, there's a rear yard setback variance. So again, we're required to have 7.5 meters, and we're proposing 4.95. So again, the existing setback of the original building is basically 0, and we're pushing it back based on the change of the building. With that, in the green, as with any development, there's a lane widening requirement for these type of proposals. So we're losing about 88 centimeters, which actually takes away, and that 0.495 is off the lane widening, not off the actual rear property line. And of course, as the committee, I'm sure they know that it's really just a dimension on paper, what that rear yard setback is, but there's no real physical reduction between our proposed building and the neighboring properties. It's really just a measurement in that lane widening. Can you switch to page 2 now? So the setback, the rear yard setback is actually measured to some second floor balconies that protrude about 1.5 meters towards the lane. So on the right-hand side of that drawing, the furthest dotted red line, that's the balcony, and that's our 4.95 meter variance. The actual massing itself is further in, and it's about 6.44 meters is the actual setback. Without the lane widening, our actual rear yard setback is 7.32 meters. We were originally designing it at the 7.5, but as part of the site plan application, you can see the 2 stacked towns on top with a kind of a courtyard in the middle. Urban design was actually asking us to increase that space just to allow for better light, better sense of community. So we did, and thus the variance was added to it. But given the 5-meter lane and the setback that we're asking for, plus the rear yards of the adjacent properties to the north off of Minto, we feel that there's adequate separation and spatial separation for privacy, etc. So we think the general intent of the rear yard setback is met. The other variance we're after is building height. So we have a 1.75 meter height variance. You can see that on that diagram on the left. That's that's basically measured to the mechanical penthouse. So typically these are exempt from zoning, but in our particular case, it's included in the height, mainly because the amenity space for these stacked towns is up on the roof. So up there, we have not only the mechanical space, but we have a small washroom, we have a little kitchenette, which is handy when you're up there. So as a result, that's considered a story, that's considered a part of building height. And even though this is a residential, or an R zone that backs onto an R zone, we're not subject to that 45 angular plane requirement that you see in some of the commercial developments, but we did take that in consideration. So on the right side, the light blue, you can see there's the angular plane dimension, and our height variance does not penetrate that at all. So we did keep that in mind for shadowing for the neighbors. The last variance I should speak about, which has really caused the most questions with our neighbors, was the landscaping. If you can switch to page 3 now.
All right, Mr. Gain, your time is actually up, so if you could wrap up now?
Sure. So just in general, the existing lot has 0 landscaping, and we're able to squeeze in a little bit just with some front yard space and some landscaping at the back by the walkway. So we feel it's a positive addition, not the 75%, but it's basically none. And just adding that, as far as part of the site plan, stormwater management, we are retaining water on the roof, so floodplain, those type of comments that you're seeing from the neighbors, that's all addressed during that. So all in all, we think the general intent of the bylaw is met. We think it's desirable, and we seek your approval.
Thank you, sir. Laurie Franz?
Hi, this is Lori Franz. I'm owner of 143 Sears Street. I think after listening to Trevor, I have to admit I did not receive any of the materials and was provided some scans from my neighbors. And I did have an opportunity to speak with the developer about this project. I do think, and Trevor, you did make reference to community consultation. I had to go out and seek that from the developer. My concern still remains a bit with your laneway. That laneway is actually my driveway. So the laneway that comes off of Minto, parallel to Eastern, goes directly into my backyard, into my driveway. So I do have concerns about putting a 9-unit building with parking available there, and will we be blocked from exiting our properties? And additionally, my other big concern is the sewer systems, which have been under tremendous stress without adding 9 dwellings, and the water runoff and flooding that we've been experiencing in the area for the last 2 decades that I've lived there. So those still are my 2 concerns. I don't know if any of my neighbors were able to make this call, but I do know they submitted letters to the committee. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Crystal, any questions, panel? All right, Crystal Luxmore? All right, so is there someone on the line with respect to this application?
Can you repeat which application, please?
914 Eastern Avenue. Hello?
Not for 914 East Avenue, but we have just arrived for 2928 Dundas Street West application. I believe it's item number 24.
All right, well,
for Taylor Hazel Architects.
thank you, we'll get to that. Okay, so you don't have Ms. Luxmore? Okay, we'll go back to Mr. Gain.
Yes, hello?
Yes.
Hi there. In regards to the lane, can I get the photographs up on the screen that I submitted? Page 3 of those. So page 3, the first photograph number on the upper left, number 13. This is, our building is on the left with the door. That's the lane, and there's the car, I guess, of number 143, as she mentioned. You can see it's very narrow, very tight. Next photograph to the left, to the right, please, number 14. This photograph is taken basically at the entrance to our property looking directly east. And again, our building on the right, you can see very narrow, very tight. And the next photograph, number 15, is basically taken right at the edge of our building. You can see how much more open it is with the parking space of the adjacent building on the right. So essentially what we're doing here, by reducing our building depth to kind of line up with that building as you see there on the right, it is quite open. So I don't believe that there would be any blocking of the lane, because we're going to have an additional 6 meters of space for our cars to drive around, not really blocking the lane. There's no reason for them to block it, given that we have substantial parking and driveway space at the rear of our property. I kind of mentioned briefly about the landscaping, the sewers, and the runoff, and as I mentioned, we have a total stormwater management plan in place. It's been circulated through development engineers, and they have no comment, and we're, like I said, we're holding water, and it's just part of the site plan and the stormwater. So we have no comments from TRCA. There's no basements, mainly because of the floodplain and things like that, but we feel we've handled the storm and sewer runoffs adequately, and as such, there's no comments from the city in there. So I hope that answers your questions about blocking the lane and servicing.
Do you have any other comments, Mr. Gain?
None at this time, no. I think if there's any questions for the panel, I'll be happy to entertain.
All right, panel, any questions? Let's take it into committee. Any comments, or do we have a motion? Yes, Lisa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of this application. I'm happy to bring a motion unless others want to weigh in, but I think this is a good representation of sort of gentle intensification in terms of residential. I think Mr. Gaines' materials are excellent. It helped me understand the application, because while the numbers may appear larger on the page, he's really pointed out how this is going to improve, I think, the situation in terms of reducing the size of the footprint of the building, introducing a small amount of softscape, better than none, and widening that area, widening the laneway. And I think Mr. Gain had pointed out in his materials as well that there's a similar type of development just at the corner of Minto and Eastern, and there's another development that's in the works on Eastern for an even taller building. So I think this fits well within the neighborhood. I don't know if anyone wants to make any other comments, but I'd like to bring, no, okay. I'd like to bring a motion forward for approval of the application, and I don't see any conditions that are being requested on this one. So just a motion, just approval without any conditions.
All right, a seconder? Yim, all in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 3, 97 Greenwood Avenue. Purpose of this application is to alter the 2-story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a full 3rd-story addition with a rear 3rd-story balcony, a rear 1-story addition, a rear ground floor deck, a rooftop hydro solar heater, and a front enclosed porch. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicants, reports from planning and urban forestry, support from 93 Greenwood, and opposition from 28 Billings Avenue. Mr. Trotter.
Sorry,
Yes.
through you, Mr. Chair, we
Oh.
also have correspondence and support from 101 Greenwood Avenue.
Right, thank you. Mr. Trotter.
Yes, Andrew Trotter, 81 St. Clarence Avenue.
Yes.
I don't know if you need me to say anything or you just want to ask questions.
Oh, we need you to say something because there's opposition.
Oh, well, the opposition is for the building height, but the building height's attached to the solar water heater. The actual building height is not a variance. The variance is tied into the solar hot water heater. So as soon as we got the zoning notice, we started working with planning and they asked us to move the solar hot water heater back. And So the other bits of opposition are really to do with the water the water runoff and vegetation and natural light. I don't really think other than that there's too many planning related issues.
Okay.
The front of the house is, maybe was there something, it's not taking the house is not going 66% over as the opposition mentioned. It's 39%. The rest of it is just kind of like water runoff and stuff that really the neighbors aren't complaining about. She's not a neighbor, so yeah, I don't really know what else is there that she's saying.
All right, why don't we hear from the neighbor, and then you can have further comments.
Okay.
All right, subject panel, do you have any questions of Mr. Trotter? Okay. Bryn Garrison, please.
Hi, Mr. Garrison. We've unmuted you. You may have to unmute yourself on your end.
Well, thank you. I'm just listening in. I don't have an objection at all. I'm just a attentive neighbor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Trotter, since that wasn't really opposition, I'm going to take it into committee unless you want to say something more.
I can't really, it seems like a pretty straightforward application to me, but if you have any questions, other than that, I don't really have anything to say.
Yeah, Yim? You're muted, Yim.
Yes, at the staff report, they suggest two conditions. Do you agree with those?
Oh, of course. Yeah, we worked with planning right away. Yeah.
Okay, that makes it easier. That's my question, and then we can discuss, or I can have a motion.
Okay. Does anyone want to make comments, or should Yim make a motion? Yim, make your motion, Yim.
If I unmute myself. Okay, I would like to move a motion for approval with forestry condition number 2 and the staff report recommending the two conditions, one tied to the drawings, the other one is the privacy screen on the third floor balcony on the north edge.
All right, do we have a seconder? Yes, Larry. All in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 4, 859 Eglinton Avenue West. Purpose of this application is to amend the site, the site-specific zoning bylaws by increasing the total gross floor area and height of the proposed mixed-use building and reducing the associated number of parking, I assume it means spaces. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from engineering, planning, and transportation services, and support from Mr. Mahevic, who says he lives at 8 Humewood Drive. Okay. Mr. Gascone.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi there, I'm Mitch Gascoigne. I'm the applicant. My address is 32 Rolliat Street.
Yes.
As mentioned, my name is Mitch. I'm Vice President of Development at CentreCorp. We're the applicant and developer of this project. I'll be brief with my comments and submissions, but the variance is fairly straightforward in so much as that it's a increase in height in GFA. Height increase is approximately 7 meters. And then some adjoining technical variances related to the parking and other small technical items. The approval was originally granted in 2018, and at that time we worked with planning and had the zoning for a particular building. Since that time, it has been 3 years, and we're adjacent to the hopefully soon to come LRT along Eglinton Street, and we've agreed to add an LRT entrance, a Metrolinx LRT entrance within the building itself. This variance increases the height of the building to represent kind of the context and what is happening along Eglinton Street now 3 years later. Since the original approval, there's been a change in the growth plan and the PPS. While it looks like the parking is reducing, the parking is staying, is not changing from the previous height of the building. We're not adding any additional parking spaces. We didn't think it made sense with the transit connectivity of this building itself. Over and above that, I don't think there's a lot to get into. I'm really happy to answer any questions. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Less is more.
Any questions? Yes, Yim?
Yeah, just a quick one. Because in the earlier report, the planning, the committee planning, they did not support your proposal, your height, because they said that you already obtained what you want in 2018, and since then they have changed their mind. Have any changes?
Sure.
Or why do they suddenly support it?
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for that. That's a big one. I should address that. So we worked with planning staff, and two of the conditions we're happy to agree to. One is a Section 45 contribution. Another is a mandatory amount of amenity space, which we would happily provide. We are happily providing. To be honest, it's just working with staff and making sure that they understood what it is we were proposing. Planning staff submitted a report. Transportation and engineering also noted no objection. Along the way, we had been working with staff, and it's on. That's a big one that I should have mentioned.
Yeah, but then the overall proposal is the same, right? This is
no change to the proposal. Just a matter of educating what we're doing and talking about what that is actually going to be.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any further questions? All right. Mr. Mihevik? Oh, sorry, Larry, do you have a question?
I did, sorry. I thought you were including a lot more res units into the revised proposal. Are you not?
Yeah, we are. In the additional height,
yeah.
We're adding additional units. It's just there wasn't a variance required for that.
Sorry, I just thought I heard you say it hadn't really changed. I just wanted to really drive home the point that you're adding, by my calculation, 57 additional units.
Yeah, you got it. 57 additional units. That's what the height and density is for.
Great, thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mihevik?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Can I just do a mic check that you're hearing me?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. I'm here to support the application. I was the counselor in the area when we had done our initial back and forth with planning and with the applicant from 2014 or so to 2018. I would submit that there is a material change in circumstances related to this particular site that justifies the extra 3 stories, which at the end of the day is 7 meters of extra height. And these are the changes that have occurred since then. Back then, the planning department was undertaking a review of all of Eglinton, and their thought processes at that time were leading them towards an 8 to 10 environment along all of Eglinton. That has since changed, and you can see that along Eglinton they are supporting heights of 20 and even 30 stories at different locations. So that piece has changed. The second piece that has changed is that when we did the initial back and forth, there was not an underground connection established for this building with the Eglinton Crosstown. Now there is, and I think that further augments that it is a transit-oriented development. The third thing that I think is important to note is that the big sensitivity that we had in the community was the transitioning to the lower rise residential homes to the south and to the west. And this particular application is not looking to add 3 stories to the entire development, but only at the corner itself, so that the transitions are preserved going westward and going southwestward towards the residential areas. So for those reasons, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I support this application and urge you to do so.
All right, thank you.
For your time.
Any questions of Mr. Mahavik? No? Okay. So, Mr. Gascone, I don't think we have to come back to you because Mr. Mahavik spoke in support, so you don't have to rebut anything. So, unless you want to add anything, Mr. Gascone?
No, I'm happy.
All right,
Nothing
thank
more
you.
from me. Thank you.
All right, any panel, any questions or any comments, or do we have a motion? Larry?
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to start on this one. I think this site, I think we'd all agree, is probably one of the most strategic sites currently available in the city, and particularly on the LRT line. I'm thrilled to see some more units being introduced into this site. It is TOD. It's a perfect site for residential use, and I think this is a completely supportable application. It's in many respects, it's technical. It's already gone through city staff. I'm happy to support it, and my colleagues don't have anything to the contrary. I'm happy to move a motion to approve, subject to the conditions as laid out in the planning staff report.
Do we have a seconder? Ian, thank you. All in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 5, 730 Gerrard Street East. Purpose of the application is to legalize and maintain a partial front and rear third-story addition and a second-story front addition of the existing 2.5-story semi-detached dwelling. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and opposition from 732 Gerrard Street East. Mr. Tong.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, I'm the applicant and also I'm the designer for 730 Gerrard Street. And basically this
So,
is
Mr. Tong, could we have your address for the record?
Okay. Okay, yeah. So, my name is Jian Hai, and I'm the applicant and also the designer for this property. And this is an existing semi-detached house in CR zone, and is subject at the same regulation listed on the RM zone. And we apply for the minor variance is because the building depth and the building length. The building depth is 19 meter, and the proposed building depth is 24 meters. And also there's the building length is 17 meters. Also the proposed is 24 meters. And the reason is we are this existing we propose to build like a second addition, second story addition above the existing, and also the partially on the 3rd floor. And this when we do the design, we realize this the exit the bylaw, so we apply the committee adjustments. And because this existing building is stay here for a few decades, and we didn't realize this is exists. So and there's a if you can see like the front yard setback, it's matching the 728 Gerrard Street and also 726. Always a matching, and there's no any hurt for the neighbor, and this is existed for a few decades, and so yeah, so I think that's gonna be belong to the minor virus.
Okay, panel, any questions? Yes, Larry?
I wonder if I just, sorry, Liam, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
I just,
muted.
I'm not sure I completely understood the issue about your length and depth. Is that an existing condition?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the existing condition. Yeah,
Okay.
It's stay here like a few decades, since last century. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question I have is whenever I see an issue where someone has proceeded to do construction without a building permit, I like to know what the reason for that might have been. Why did you proceed to build without having the benefit of a building permit?
Yeah, that's the owner as feel this is existing, and I think he's lack of the knowledge, so that's why he think this is existing, and then we can build it. So when I join on this the design and send to the apply for the building permit, so this is existing and it's already constructed, but we based on the building code, we're gonna be revised to matching all the building code except this. But we realized the building length is the existing building length is already exceeds the bylaw. But if you take a look at the neighbor, it's everyone is already exceed. It's the same matching with the neighbor. Even the setback or the length. Yeah.
All right, Jim?
Yes, we understand the existing condition, and my friend asked you a different question. He actually asked you what the reason was when you started to build without the benefit of a permit, and you said that you were the designer of the addition. Did you not know that you cannot build without a permit? Of course, the existing condition, we know there's a house there. It's very long.
Yeah.
But that's not the question. My friend asked you why you think you could just go ahead and build without applying.
This is a single family home, and I think the owner have he said he has 4 kids and don't have a room to stay, so that's why he has built more room for his family, and this is strictly for the single family home. Yeah.
So Chair, I don't think we're getting a satisfactory answer to this question, so I'm going to assume that there is no satisfactory answer to that question.
Sorry, maybe I misunderstand your question.
So, just to back up, so you, the owner, has received an order to comply.
Yes.
That means is building activity had been undertaken prior to receiving a building permit and prior to going through the appropriate process to make sure that plans have been prepared and, everything that's being done meets the Ontario provincial building code. So you didn't do that. That's why you got an order to comply.
Yes.
Wondering why the owner proceeded to do that work without first applying for a building permit.
I think owner don't have knowledge for that. After he built it and realized this is not to the, so he has to, right now he go back to the building permit, and that's the reason.
So in that answer, but you were not, are you the designer for the original addition? Or
Yeah, I'm the designer. Yeah. When I joined the design, the building is already done, but we're gonna be modify the new addition to matching the building code.
To match. Okay. I actually have a very big question about my understanding of what you propose, because I see different photographs and then I Google the property. What is being built at the front is one photograph does not show there's quite a tall wooden fence on top of the second story wood deck. And one, it doesn't have, what is there now? What are you proposing? Are you going to tear it down or?
Yeah, it's gonna be tear down for sure. Yeah. So this is didn't matching the building code. So we're gonna be tear down and put the sloped roof to above that. And so the proposed the addition will be for sure we're gonna meet the building code. And the bylaw, yeah.
We are not discussing the building code. I just want to know, the deck is already been taken down or is still there or what? I just want to know, because one photograph I see is already built there.
Yeah, the one so right now we are waiting for the building permit. Once we got the building permit, the fence will be taken down.
Any further questions?
So that's the purpose of our.
No, so the staff can show the elevation, the front elevations. I think the proposed does not have a wood deck, but some of the presentation material by the oppositions and also the current Google photograph have above the second floor. There's a quite a large wooden deck with about 6 feet or even higher wooden deck right in front of the building.
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at the elevation, it's that the existing fence and the deck will be removed, and this is not to the code, so we have to remove it, and even not to the bylaw, we have to remove this one. Yeah. So if you see, I show there's an existing and a proposed.
I just want to make sure that's not going to be
Yeah. This is gonna be not. It's gonna be taken down. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, Larry.
Chair, I wonder if I have a question. So I'm just looking at the plans. Can you just confirm how many bedrooms you're planning to have in this structure?
The bedroom, just hold on a second.
Looks like there's a lot.
It's, let me see. There's a bedroom let's see. Let's go, the proposed, let me see, it's from the, ground floor. There's nothing on the basement. The ground floor, there's the ground floor pretty much is a study room and dining living area. And on the second floor we have a one bedroom, there's a one bedroom, two bedroom. The second floor, there's a 2-bedroom, and the third floor we have 1 bedroom. There's a total like a 4-bedroom.
Okay, so you're confirming this is a single-family dwelling. This isn't going to be a family dwelling.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, for sure. We applied a single family, and this is just only one family living there.
Ms. Ho?
Hi, Selena. We've unmuted you on our end. You might have to unmute yourself on your end.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi there. My name is Richard Howe, and I'm speaking on behalf of Tep Tam and Selena Chingyu Howe, who are the owners of 732 Gerrard Street East, the property immediately next to the property in question.
Can we have your address, sir, for the record?
Thank you. I would just like to summarize our position.
All right, Mr. Howe, could we have your address for the record?
It's 57 Sherrill Bay Court, Scarborough, Ontario.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I would like to just summarize our position. The applicant has consistently acted in bad faith in modifications of his house over the last several years. With that, it has had material impact on our property as well as our property line. Even listening to the comment about him not knowing about having to have a building permit is incorrect, because we advised him on several occasions, multiple times in previous years, that he must do that.
Sir, we are the Committee of Adjustments. We don't
I understand.
we don't deal with construction issues, so you have to confine your comments to the variances that are being asked for.
I understand. We have submitted various supporting documents that identifies 6 significant issues that relate to our property rights, and also, more importantly, public safety, that proves our assertion of bad faith. Overall, the applicant's apparent lack of use of past building permits, which is highlighted in the supporting documents, underscores his repeated disregard for following and respecting rules, even respecting our property line. Now he wants to further build on top these unpermitted additions to his house. So therefore, accepting, legalizing this proposal or any bylaw variances would just be reinforcing the fact that he should continue to blatantly disregard laws, property rights, and the process of building in a lawful and proper and safe manner. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, sir. Panel, any questions? Mr. Tong, do you have any rebuttal to those comments?
Yes, I don't think it's going to affect the neighbor. If you take a look at the Google, the street view, and even either the height of the building and the setback, all the matching the 728 and 726 as all the line, and the height didn't exceed the neighbor. So I and also this all the building is stay there for a few decades. I don't think that's going to be have to impact the neighbor, or this is going to have some issue for that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tong. Panel, any questions? Lisa?
Thank you. I was just looking at the survey, and the house, it looks like it's dated, I think it's from 1988, I think. Anyway, the survey for the property shows it being quite a bit smaller, especially in terms of length. So is there, at some point, I'm assuming there must have been a single-story addition put on the back. Is that correct? Because when I read the purpose of the application, I'm sorry, it's hard to tell from the plans what the existing and what is being added. Are you adding a 2-story addition at the back, or is it?
Yes, because this is over 100 years old building, and they do the renovation many times, even since from the 1988 to right now. The owner applied a couple of times about the building permits. So the front porch and addition on the second floor, and they have sent some building permit. Yeah.
So in terms of what is being added in this application, it's not the two-story addition at the back. Are you telling me the existing building length?
Yeah, the third
20
story. Yeah, the third story is addition, and partly of the second story, and which is the existing. There's a porch on the ground and matching the neighbor, and he built the second story above the porch, and this is.
Well, there's not a porch today, right? That's enclosed in.
Yeah, that's
so
the
there's
thing,
not
yes.
a porch because I did go by the place and there's not a porch.
Yeah, it's close to porch, and that's the second story in the front.
So the bay window has been removed, and I'm assuming there was a bay window there at one point. I mean, we don't have the benefit of knowing what the actual property looked like. So was there a bay window that matched the attached neighbor at, I think it must be, 732?
Yeah, 732 is that, but if you look at the 728 and 726, it's the same setback. It's a match.
At the front. So then if we look at the rear, you're asking for a depth variance, and is that all related to the front enclosing the porch and all those things, or was there a rear two-story addition put on at some point? Because when I look at the survey, the property looks a lot shorter in terms of length and depth than it is today. So I'm just trying to figure out what's being legalized, all of it or just some of it?
Yeah, and on the rear yard, there's nothing. The second story, there's nothing changed. It's all remain the same. The only thing is adding the front one. It's above the closing. Enclosing porch above that, and the major construction is on the third floor, partially.
Is that built already?
Yeah, it's already built already, but we're gonna have to do the modification, make sure this is gonna be matching the building code.
Okay.
Any further questions? Or any comments? Or do we have a motion?
Sorry, may I add one more thing?
No, I'm sorry. We're in committee now. We're not taking any further comments.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, maybe I start with some comment. I find it difficult to support this application because the question have been asked why they need to have the addition is never been answered. We just say it's a single family dwelling, but it is many houses family dwelling, but I do not know how can explain that there are more than 4 bedrooms and everyone has got his own bathroom or something. And also it's been built, and I do think that it does impact the labor a lot if they're taking this kind of process. Although we're not supposed to comment on process, we're looking at the variance. But then when I look at the variance, and then this it is at the front addition, and I'm not too sure why it is justified. There's no explanation because it's been built. So I without the planning rationale, I'm not too sure why I will lend my support.
So, Yim, did you want to make a motion? Unless anyone else has comments. Do you have a comment, Larry or Lisa? Larry?
Yeah, I'll just weigh in a little bit. I'm struggling with this one a little bit. I think what it comes down to is I'm uncomfortable with the answers that we've been given, and I'm uncomfortable with understanding better what the proposal is, and I feel like I'm getting conflicting answers to questions. So I'm not necessarily averse to the application. I just feel uncomfortable approving it in this sort of fuzzy, I don't sure exactly what's there, don't know what was built when, and I don't know exactly what is being proposed. So I will admit I'm struggling a little bit with this one for those reasons. But I want to hear from Lisa.
I think from my perspective, I have some issues with the depth of the dwelling, and I don't understand fully how that happened. So that's where I'm struggling, and that's sort of why I looked at the survey and asked the question. I think that this is a lot deeper. I thought I heard the applicant say this will be matching the neighbor at, I guess it's 728, but you know, based on the plans, from what I can tell, this is going to be well beyond what everybody else currently has. In terms of the front addition, I understand that it's going to change somewhat, because what's there now, in my view, is not compatible with anything that's currently existing. So I also am struggling with this one, to be honest, and I am uncomfortable supporting something that I don't fully understand the nature of the application, and I do have some concerns about the depth. I don't know if they got if we're approving that, but they got a prior variance for that or a permit. It's not clear to me, so I can't really support something if I don't understand it fully.
Yeah, it just seems to me that, you know, we would be in a better position, I think, if the presentation was a little bit better, frankly, that it was a little clearer for us understand the history of this application, what they're actually proposing, and relates to what's there now. So, you know, maybe this would be something that might benefit from, you know, at some future point, them coming back with a much clearer application.
Yeah, what I'm looking for, I can see the variances in front of me. What I'm looking for is the rationale, planning rationale. Why is justified, right, to add in the front and also add to the back? And that I mean, like, if they can give me good reasons, I'm willing to listen. But they haven't told us any reasons, the planning reasons. So I'm in the same position too.
So I think we're all.
Sorry. Mr. Chairman, do you have some comment?
Yeah, I think we're all in a position where we don't quite understand the application, and I agree with Larry that it has to do with it may only have to do with the nature of the presentation. And it may very well be, and I don't know, it may very well be that this application is fine but poorly explained, and I'd hate to reject a reasonable application because there was a poor presentation. I'm going to put on the table for your consideration, panel, that we might want to defer this and ask the applicant to come back with a better presentation. If not, then they'll may not come back at all. But it may be a good application. We don't know. We didn't get proper answers, and we got conflicting answers, in fact. So, but I'd hate to turn something down because the presentation wasn't good. I'd prefer to defer it and see if the applicant can come back with a better explanation, a better presentation. So I'm in your hands as to what you want.
Chair, can I just ask a clarification?
Yeah.
Maybe your experience will be helpful here. If we refuse it, does that prevent them from coming back at a later date with another application?
No, but it requires them to pay the fee again. But if we defer it, they don't have to pay a fee.
I think that maybe that's a nice way to, I think it's fair to say that all four of us are uncomfortable approving this, given the nature of the materials and the confusion around exactly what's happened and why we're at where we're at right now and what they're actually proposing. So I'm not uncomfortable with the deferral, if you think that's the better path to go. But again, I think the deferral with some advice to the applicant that they really do their homework and think about the questions we've asked today, and maybe come back prepared to answer those in a more straightforward fashion.
Okay, is that your motion, Larry?
Sure, I'll move a motion to defer.
Okay.
I just want to ask.
Just a
do
minute,
we need
Yim.
to ask
Yim,
the
just one,
applicant-
Yim, just 1 minute. I want Larry to
Okay.
put in the conditions that he talked about with respect to what the purpose of the deferral is.
Yeah, no, so I'll move deferral with the sort of comment, I guess, that, in returning to this committee, the applicant should undertake efforts to make sure that the presentation not only is clear, but addresses many of the questions more clearly as we pose them today, and provide a good overview of the history of the application, where they are right now, and exactly what they're proposing.
All right, Yim, do you want to make a comment?
Oh no, yeah, I agree with what actually I'm supportive of deferral, but I thought that do we need to ask the applicant their willingness to have a deferral, or they want to have us making a decision today? Which is refuse them. I don't think they want that.
Yeah. Okay, did you say we should ask Mr. Tong if he wants a decision today, or he wants to defer? Yim?
Maybe defer. I gonna be talk to the owner about the real reason about this. So maybe we'll come back later and give you better presentation and explain why we're gonna be have this room and how gonna be work that way.
Okay, good. Thank you. So Yim, are you seconding Larry's motion? All right. All in favor of a deferral? You have a deferral, sir. Thank you very much. Item number 6, 152 Pickering Street. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing one-story detached dwelling by constructing a 2-story front and rear addition, second and third-story addition, a ground floor rear deck, a third-story front balcony, a third-story rear deck, front porch stairs, and a front basement walkout. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. We have comments from planning and urban forestry, and we have opposition from numerous addresses on Pickering Street. Mr. Goldman.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I am Barry Goldman. I'm the architect and the agent for this application. In light of the number of opposition letters.
Yeah, Mr. Goldman, can we have your address before you go on?
I'm sorry. 321 Carlaw Avenue, Suite 203.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
So just for the sake of brevity, I'm going to summarize the opposition into 3 categories. A lot of people have spoken about trees. We do show all the trees on the property. The diameters were taken from an up-to-date property survey, but in any case, and it's one of the conditions that any permit will have to be approved by urban forestry. We do not intend to injure or kill any trees in urban forestry. Will be making sure that that's the case. The second objection that I'm going to just summarize from the opposition is for a GFA. We are proposing, or pardon me, FSI. We're proposing an FSI of 0.8 times lot area. When we pulled the decisions from the last 5 years within 500 meters, we found that the average FSI granted by this committee was 0.85. We are seeking 0.8. In other words, what we are asking for is less than the average FSI awarded by the committee. The other issue that a lot of people are talking about is the front setback. That is an existing condition. We are not proposing to alter the existing front setback. We are proposing to build a second story over that front setback. With regard to height, I will point out that we are not building the third floor over the entire building. It represents roughly 60% of the building length. In terms of the neighbors' issues with regard to daylight and privacy, I would suggest that if we were building an as-of-right building and seeking no variances, those issues would still be there. The windows in question from the neighbor to the north, and I'll point out we're about 9 feet apart. There's a driveway in between us, but those windows that they're referencing in their letter are to second floor bathrooms. We will happily frost that. I imagine we would in any case because those are bathroom windows. So again, there are existing conditions which are generating the front yard setback. The trees are going to be protected by urban forestry. Other neighbors have suggested they're unaware of 3-story buildings on the street. I'd politely ask them to look from their front porch across the street. There are 3-story buildings on Pickering now with similar massing to what we're proposing. Numbers 141, 142, 136, 155, 166, 165, 200, 202, and 204. Wasn't able to obtain heights for those within our search parameters, but if any of you care to look on Google Street View, you will see 3-story buildings on Pickering within 50 meters of the subject site. I think that concludes my initial presentation.
Any questions, panel? Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Edgar?
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So my name is Ross Edgar, and I reside at 154 Pickering Street, which is the dwelling immediately to the north of 152 Pickering. My wife and I have lived at 154 for 13 years and in the neighborhood for 20 years. 154 Pickering Street was built in 1913, and the neighborhood is comprised of modest single-family homes, mostly 2 stories, detached, semi-detached. If you could show picture 1 and 2 that we submitted in our letter of objection. Oh, that's not our. That's not our.
That's not yours? Okay.
Yeah.
When did you submit it?
13th. Yeah. Oh, the 13th of October.
Is that these 2? Or these 3?
No.
How about these?
Yes, that's it. Yeah. So this one shows the opposite side of the street, the dwellings that the applicant was mentioning. They're 2-story row houses. There are some like loft 3rd stories. The street to the south is mostly 2 stories. If you could scroll down, please. The second picture shows the existing houses at 152, also 146, 154, 158, and 160 are all sort of similar size and height. The the existing structure at 152 is a single-story dwelling. So our objections are with all the 4 variances because it's an attempt to overbuild on the lot size. The lot sizes on Pickering Street are fairly small, and so the 4 variances when put together is building a house that is much bigger than the existing structures and go beyond like the character of the neighborhood. I have objections to the first variance, which is the minimum setback, because the tree in the picture there you can see, it's in picture number 2, right in front of 152 is the tree on the plans on A1. The trees, I believe, are measured incorrectly because I measured the diameters and it generates different tree protection zones. And in my letter of objection, also deals with the trees at the rear of the property. So the front is a city-owned tree and the ones in the back are private. So I believe that the tree protection zones extend right into the area that's proposed for construction and would result in damage to the trees. I know the applicant talked about the tree protection and the forestry report, but we have concerns about the size of the building is impacting to mature trees on the property. My second objection is with the height. The height proposed would completely block sunlight from our property and the neighboring properties to the north. If you could show number 6. So if you could scroll down. One more, please. One more. Yeah, this one. So the picture that's at the bottom left shows the existing roof line. If you can see, the skylight is there. On the plans on A8, it shows that the bottom of the skyline is where the proposed second story would start, and the structure would go 2 stories above this, which is 18 feet above this. And you know, we didn't have time to commission a shade study, but when you look at this view, it would completely block sunlight to our property and garden, and feel that the proposed building is much bigger than permitted, and these variances are an attempt to overbuild. The third objection is with the FSI. So the variance request is 33% more than the maximum allowable, and it's impacting the tree protection zones at the front and the rear of the property. And those trees are protected under municipal code. And then the final one is the most minor. So the applicant says that the 4 variances are minor. The last one is the most minor, is the front porch structure. And so we're not objecting to renovation or construction of a new home on this lot. We're just asking the committee to consider that going beyond the maximum or minimum requirements in 4 areas mean that this would be too big for the lot and the surrounding community, and we feel that it doesn't meet the 4 tests. They're not minor, they're not desirable, and don't maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaws. And so respectfully request that this application be denied and the applicant submit a revised proposal that does not create such an impact to the community.
Thank you. Any panel, any questions? Okay. Ms. McGuire?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. To the chair and members of the committee and other presenters and observers, my name is Linda McGuire. My husband Ken and I live at 146 Pickering Street, a home directly to the south of 152 Pickering. I've submitted my letter of objection to the proposed variances, but I wanted to highlight a couple of items and ask the committee to consider a few points as you make your decision. My letter points out that there are a number of errors in the submitted plans and information. I know that, I heard the architect, his name is Barry, I know that, speak to taking the measurement of the trees from a survey, but I think that shows a lack of due diligence. because there's a significant difference. I wasn't able to duplicate all the measurements of the existing houses shown in the plans, but my neighbors, the Edgars, have found there's errors in the drawings of the existing house as well. I know how to use a measuring tape to measure a tree, and I expect that architects should also be able to do this. So I think this really speaks to you perhaps making a decision based on documents that have errors. So I would be concerned if I were you with not having the appropriate factual information in this context. In terms of them indicating that they plan to protect the trees, with the tree protection zones being the wrong size, those zones would encroach, as my neighbors mentioned, on the build itself. There was previously a friend of the owner of 152 living in the property, who was apparently fixing up the place before renting it, who spoke to my husband and I about the upcoming renovation. And he said to me that the maple tree in the backyard would be in the way, so we'll just find an arborist who will say it's dying so we can cut it down. I think this speaks volumes about a lack of care about the city's right, and indeed citizens' rights, to have city bylaws and have them followed. So I would be concerned if I were you in approving this in this context. I have personal knowledge of the backyard maple tree is quite healthy. My husband and I have shared the cost since we moved here in 2000 with the former owner, to have tree inspections done by a qualified arborist from Hudson Tree Services, who appropriately pruned it to ensure its continued health. So given climate change, we need more green space, more oxygen creating plant life, not less. And I do believe if the house is built as planned, it is too far backward on the lot and too far forward. They are digging there. It's not that they're not changing the front. They may be keeping it in the same place, but they will be digging, and that would be inappropriately endangering the trees. The build is also too tall. My neighbors have spoken about that and the shade that it would cause. I have been told that you don't care about impacts like shade and blocking sunlight, but I have, listening today, it's clear that you really do care about the city. And I hope that you will care about the damage that is being done to the community of the Upper Beach, which is full of modest-sized homes by a house of this incredible mass that is very oversized for the neighborhood. Yes, there are houses with a third story, as the architect pointed out. But those are generally just an attic room. They're not a big, blocky, almost full-size third story. I don't really have faith that the current owner of 152 is trying to improve the community. We know from speaking to one of his own family members that the owner does not intend to live in the property, and being lived in is what houses.
Miss McGuire, you're giving us a lot of hearsay. I, for one, are not going to accept what you're telling us somebody said. So just carry on with what impact this is going to have on you without quoting people we don't know and haven't heard from and won't hear from.
The home is currently a well-maintained solid brick bungalow. It's not falling down by any stretch of the imagination, and is providing useful rental stock in a city that has too little affordable housing. So, in a city that says it's focused on creating more affordable housing, not less, it doesn't make sense to renovate the tenants, to convert this into a $3 million home that is completely out of character and oversized for the neighborhood. So, if the property is to be renovated, please require the owners to stay within the guidelines of the existing bylaws. The bylaws are there to maintain a reasonable set of standards, and I think they should be followed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Allen, Mr. Ross?
Okay, so Diane Allen. Okay, so my husband and I have lived at 160 Pickering, which is 3 doors north of the proposed renovation, since 1989, for 31 years. And prior to that, we lived a couple streets over for nearly a decade. So we're really familiar with the neighborhood, the sense of community, the way people relate to each other, and And perhaps I can start by, you know, the FSI thing that's mentioned. I'm very familiar with the neighborhood, and I can say, you know, most of the renovations, other than a couple that, you know, were for a tear down on the street, which produced another massive block house like this, have been modest. I mean, yes, they're over the standard FSI because the houses are so small. So when the row houses across the street from us, for example, put on a small addition for a kitchen on the back, that's very different than putting up something massive like this. And I'm also perplexed. The house immediately to the north of us is shown on this this document that was submitted with FSI of 0.8 or greater approved. That house, we've been here 31 years. That house has never had an addition put on it. So I'm perplexed as to why the drawing shows that as though it had been approved. But anyways, beyond that, you know, my feelings about the proposal are that it will transform, it's totally out of character with the neighborhood. It will transform a modest bungalow into a 3.5-story house of a size and design totally out of keeping with the character of this long-established neighborhood where houses, including our own, were built in the 1920s. The building will be too large for the lot. Most of the lots, ours included, are 25 feet wide. I mean, they're small in width. The issue of the current bungalow has got 2 rental housing units in it. You know, the family that lived there for years and years and sold it a couple of years ago, they built a basement apartment in it for their daughter. And so this will take 2 reasonably affordable rental units off the market and transform this into a house that is for sure going to sell for $3 million. There was one sold similar to this, only smaller, and sold 2 years ago down the street for over $2 million. These sorts of developments are totally transforming a neighborhood. You know, those of us who currently live here would never, people like us would never be able to afford to buy here. And our children, the children that have grown up on these streets, they can't even afford to rent here anymore, much less buy. So in my view, this will result in housing that's even more unaffordable at the very time that Toronto is experiencing a severe crisis of both availability and affordability. The bungalow in question sold for about $1 million in 2019, and this proposal will, as I say, for sure be probably close to $3 million. In addition, the concerns about the landscape being destroyed and the you know, the sense of intrusion and violation of privacy and the shade for the surrounding homes. You know, we're all going to be affected by this. And light and if the pandemic has made anything clear, it's that those of us who are fortunate enough to live in actual houses instead of being crammed into tiny condos or apartments, you know, the importance of light, the importance of being outside, the importance of being able to see your neighbors, and this is going to take all of that away. And I know that there are 14 letters of objection, I believe, that went in from the immediate neighborhood.
All right. Miss Allen, your time is up. Perhaps you could wrap up now.
Okay, I just want to say one last thing. I think that you might have had even more letters of objection, had there been a decent signs posted that this was a proposal. All there is a very tiny sign in the front window of the bungalow. It's not visible to anybody walking by on the street. I didn't even know it was there myself until I read the material from the committee. So anyways, that kind of sums it up. I think it would, if this is approved, it would set a really negative precedent for future development in this whole area.
Thank you. Panel, any questions? Mr. Goldman?
I'm just going to circle back and suggest again, variances 1 and 4 are existing conditions on the bungalow now that we are proposing to maintain. The front yard setback is an existing condition. The exterior stair from the ground floor to grade is an existing condition. We do propose to construct a walkout. The stairwell will come to the front. However, those stairs are going down. We worked with planning staff and we're screening the walkout with a vegetative screen. When you're on the sidewalk, you don't see the stairs going down. With regard to the tree, it is possible that the surveyor did make an error. As an architect, if I get an up-to-date survey, I typically rely on it, but having been alerted that the diameters may be off, we will go back and verify. Urban forestry would be doing that in any case. If the tree protection zone needs to be adjusted, it will be. If that's the case, it wouldn't affect any of the variances we're seeking. With regard to daylight, again, if we were to construct an as-of-right building, the impact to daylight of the neighbors would be the same. The proposed third floor is set back from the front and the rear. So its impact both to the streetscape and to shadows cast on adjacent properties would be minimized as a result of the setback from the front and rear. And I'd suggest that despite the increased height we're asking for, which is 0.85 meters above the maximum permitted, that because of the setback to the front and rear, we've effectively mitigated the shadows in any case. And I'll just reiterate, were we to come in as of right with a building that required no variances, the issues that they are raising would still be the case. I know they're saying that this building is too big. 138 Pickering was awarded an FSI of 1.03. And again, the average FSI awarded when a decision for FSI is requested is 0.85. We are asking for 0.8. In other words, we're asking for significantly less than the average FSI awarded by this committee. I think that is my wrap up.
Right,
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Mr. Goldman, how many square feet does this house have? We've heard how massive it is. I want to get a concept of how big it is.
The total GFA is 3,024 square feet. I'm not including the basement, which the basement should not be included. It's not considered part of the zoning definition. So that's 3,000 square feet, 281 meters, which gives us an FSI of 0.8.
Yeah, Yim, you have a question?
I want to refresh myself because I look at the plan just a while ago. Is the basement a rental unit, or that's why you need the walk out?
We are setting up. We are not requesting a basement rental now, but we are setting up the building so that it could be converted to a second dwelling unit, or it could be simply a home office. This is my typical go-to move when I'm doing work in these types of houses, which is to render the basement fully habitable. The intention is to have a direct entrance from the street and full daylight, floor to ceiling glass. We are not requesting a second dwelling unit now, but the building is set up just for that flexibility. One of the speakers was talking about the dearth of housing opportunities in the city, and the fact that really the only affordable options are condos, and that is the intent. Simply so if somebody buys this and chooses to, it's set up for them to work in a pleasant space with a view of the street and or potentially create a second dwelling unit. That of course would require additional building permits that we don't intend to apply for now.
Oh, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, let's go into committee. Do you have any comments, or do we have a motion? Yes, Lisa?
Thank you. I understand the neighbors, concern. When I was looking at the documents, this house is quite small. It's probably, I would say, the smallest house in the street. So it looks probably to them on paper that it's going to be huge because this is going to be a big change. But when I look at when I look at the plans, I think the massing, I think the architect has taken time to control the massing by, bringing the third floor back from the front and the back. It's stepped in. And we've also heard that there are other houses in this neighborhood that have similar FSI. So yes, I understand it's going to be a big change for the neighbors, particularly the adjacent neighbors, but they've had a benefit of a very small house. I would say it's probably the smallest house in this part of the street, or if not the street. I did note there were other three-story houses in the vicinity, and I don't think the variances in this case are unreasonable. As Mr. Goldman pointed out, if they built something that was within the permitted zoning permissions of the bylaw for FSI, it would still have those same impacts on the neighbors in terms of, having a second story above. So I'm in favor of the application myself. I don't know if my colleagues want to add to that, but I'm supportive of it.
All right, Larry?
I'll just make an observation. First of all, I agree with everything Lisa said. I did want to thank all the residents for their comments, and we did hear you. I would add to Lisa's point that, where this house is located, it's close to 2 schools, a community center, and a walk to Kingston. And those are, not surprisingly, what contributes to these being desirable neighborhoods. And when you're in a desirable neighborhood, it's not uncommon to see proposals such as this, where small, undersized dwellings are bought up and new, larger ones are put in. So I would agree with everything she said, and I similarly will support. I did want to acknowledge the one thing about the trees. That was a lot of people had written in about the trees, and people should take comfort that if we approve this, it has to go through urban forestry, and urban forestry will send folks out there and have a look at those trees and make sure that they're protected as per the regulations. So, but I agree. I think this is a reasonable proposal, and the variances before us are actually quite minor indeed.
Yeah, Lisa? Yim?
So I actually agree with both what you said, but also I want to add another comment is that there's some oppositions about the worry of the housing stock. I do not think that this addition, this proposal, will change that much. Whether the kind of problem we have, the housing, right, is not going to change much. And I do not believe that it was reasonable to say that they are only allowed to maybe build something that almost not visible. The house, as Lisa says, very small. It's been small for 100 years. So whoever can afford buying a house now will probably quite reasonable to propose something like this. And we are looking at 2 variants that are existing, and the other 2 are within the I see it as minor. There's 20% increase in FSI, and also just less than a meter high in total height. I think the massing actually will fit in the site, and I will be in support of this proposal.
Right. Lisa?
With the forestry condition number 1 and 2, and I do not think there's another conditions. I like to move for approval.
All right, thank you. Larry, you second that
I
motion?
could just make maybe a friendly suggestion. I did notice that there was a third-story deck off the back, and I wasn't sure from the drawings. It was unclear to me whether it was screened. But when we see through third stories in a fairly tight neighborhood, I think it's prudent for us to suggest that maybe as a condition we add that third floor deck be required to have privacy screening as well.
Sure, if it works.
I just couldn't tell from the drawings whether it was already there or not.
Lisa?
Sorry to interrupt. I wrote down their planning conditions about screening, but I can't find them. So screening the basement walkout, or is that just a comment?
Yeah, that one is being revised. It seems that they already produced drawings have revised that.
Okay, so Larry, are you seconding the motion, subject to the screening?
Yeah, again, I'm just not sure whether that was an already existing condition that planning staff did, but even if it is, we'll just throw it into, or boilerplate it a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, you're okay with that, Jim?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, all in favor? All right, you have your approval, sir, thank you. Number 7.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Can we take a couple minutes just to switch over the YouTube feed?
I think it's a propitious time to take a break.
I agree. For those of you who are watching on our YouTube stream, we're going to be changing over to the next stream. So this stream will be ending. If you look on the city's YouTube channel, you'll be able to find the 2 p.m. Time slot of the stream.
Okay, 5 minutes, Sabrina? Okay, 5 minutes.